Hi, I am Christine Haber, and welcome to my first episode in my series of short video clips about common post-processing issues or errors. In this episode, I'll be touching on the dreaded white or black outline that can occur when you have over-sharpened an image. These are often referred to as sharpening halos. So, sharpening works on the edges of light and dark pixels, and the key to effective sharpening is a balance between making the edges appear sufficiently pronounced while also minimizing these sharpening halos. So, sharpening takes place in what I consider the three main steps in image processing. The first step is during the raw processing, and I call that capture sharpening. Then when you go into your creative editing, I consider that step to be creative sharpening. And then finally, before you go to print, that is the offset sharpening. So, first, during the raw processing, a small amount of sharpening is done to offset your camera's characteristics. Most raw images have a little bit of a blur, and they vary from which lens you use or what camera you use, but a lot of times you do want to do just a slight amount of capture sharpening in the raw processing software that you're using. I'm in ON1's raw processor, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust the sharpening at this point as the capture sharpening. And I usually pick progressive, and I do about 20 to 25 on each of those since I just need a slight amount of sharpening at this point. I'm using a Sony A7R camera, and so this number could vary depending on what camera you use and what lens you use. So I'm going to go ahead and look at it at 100%, and specifically looking at the areas between the light pixels and the dark pixels. And to see what my adjustments did, I can click on and off the sharpening, and you can see it just has a slight amount of sharpening at this point, just enough to get rid of that camera blur. Alright, I'm ready to take my image into Effects, where I can do my creative sharpening. I'm going to go ahead and add the sharpening filter and make my adjustments to the sharpening filter I'm looking at it globally right now, but because I want to sharpen the center area here, I'm looking to see what it looks like on a global scale, but then I'm going to paint that sharpening effect back into the image. So I want to go ahead and look at that again at 100% to see what's going on with my edges and with the detail. If I drag it all the way up, you can see how it's really affecting the rocks. So I'm going to take that down a little bit, add a little bit I'll look at what the detail does, but I'm going to take that back down. I tend to like about around 40 or 50 when I'm using progressive. Go ahead and fit. I'm going to look and see what that does, and it does a nice little job of sharpening without over sharpening, because that's the key, is not to sharpen these images. I'm going to create a mask, and because I want to paint it in, I will invert it, and I'm going to go up to my I'm going to paint in. I am using the masking brush, and I'm going to choose the perfect brush. So as long as I keep these crosshairs just right there within the mountain, then that's what's going to be affected. Anything under those crosshairs. And I can decrease the size of this brush if I need to, and then increase it actually while I'm painting. So I tend to take a lot more time doing these steps when I'm processing my images for my art shows or my gallery shows. But for your benefit, I'm going to go through this real quickly and just sharpen the center area And I'm going to go ahead and look at the effect by clicking on and off. And so it's doing a nice job on that sharpening. Look at it at 100% again. And turn it back on. And again, if I want to see a more dramatic look, I can increase just that area that I've just painted in. So there you can see it there. But I'm going to take it back down to about 50 on the amount and 50 on the detail. And as long as I like what I see here, then I'm ready to take it into resize, which is my final step in the sharpening process. Alright, I am in the resize, which I go into this module right before I choose to print my work. And so here's again the sharpening, and it's a similar slider system in each of the different steps that I took earlier. So I don't necessarily need to run back through the different aspects of this, but again, go ahead and look at the image at 100% if you make any adjustments. If you choose a preset, let's say a Epson matte type paper, they have the different sizes. You can then add your own preset based on the type of paper or substrate that you print onto and add it as one of your either favorites that you see here, or I have mine listed under Christine's presets. You can also change the size over here. So I'm going to show you if I'm going to do a 30 by 48 of this print, what it's going to look like at that 100% one-to-one. And that's what it would look like if somebody came close to your image and looked at it with their nose right to the print. We call them pixel peepers. And so if I'm to make some dramatic changes on my sharpening, you're really going to see them at that one-to-one. So at this point, because of how much sharpening I've added, I'm starting to see artifacts within the sky that are not attractive to me. So keep that in mind when you are sharpening your images. Again, you don't want to see that white halo, and you don't want to see the darker black line either. You also want to look at any of the pixelizations that will take place in your sky. Nothing's worse than getting a print back that has been enlarged much larger than it should be and sharpened too much. So keep that in mind, and thanks, and have fun processing.